District Senate seat, and John Wheeler, Mr. Wheeler, and Mr. Erskine didn't make it here tonight for the 123rd District in the House. We're going to follow the same format that we did earlier this evening. We're going to have a 5-minute opening statement for each individual. We will have 2 minutes to answer each question as we get to the questions. And then we will have a 3-minute closing from each candidate as well. And again, if you have questions that pertain here to the state seats that we're looking at, please raise your hand. Rick is here right there. He's got his hand raised. And he will get those note cards to you so you can jot down your question, and we'll see if we can get to them. We're going to start with opening statements tonight. Senator Powell.
I'll turn it off when I give it to John. Thank you very much, and thanks for putting this deal on tonight. I am Larry Powell. I'm the current senator, and I've been very lucky in my Senate position. I'm on the Ag Committee. Haven't been kicked off yet. I'm the chairman of the Natural Resources Committee. I'm on the Ways and Means Committee. I'm on the Tax Committee. I'm on the Utilities Committee. I'm on the Building Committee. And I'm chairman of the Ag and Natural Resources Budget Committee. So I don't have much time to return phone calls and stuff like this. We're pretty busy during the day. I enjoy being your senator, and I want to talk about the special session. The special session I'm glad it was short. We go in on Thursday, and we introduce a bill in Ways and Means at the rail. We have a Ways and Means meeting to kick the bill out, and we're done for the day. So besides the special session, we also had the Energy Council, which was meeting in Wichita. The Energy Council is 11 energy-producing states and 2 Canadian provinces that get together to talk about energy policy, oil, natural gas, wind. So after we kicked the bill out of the Ways and Means Committee, why it takes a long time to get these bills written and stuff like this, I head for Wichita. And on Thursday night, I stay all night in Wichita. Friday morning, I welcome the Energy Council because, on the behalf of the Senate President and Speaker Merrick. And I was the only one, well, no, Dennis Hedke from Wichita was there for a little bit. And then I zipped back to Topeka, and I thought, well, we're going to get this done really quick. But it didn't happen. The House wanted to change things a little bit. I think they changed it for the better. The school districts, particularly this school district, made out better. Some of my districts didn't make out better, but anyway, we got done about 8:30. I go back to Wichita. I get there at 11 and introduce people that are going to be speakers. We had mostly Kansas speakers. We had the chairman of the Kansas Corporation Commission, and we had Rex Buchanan from the Geological Survey, and we had Tracy Streeter from the Water Office. And so we had all those meetings in Wichita on Saturday, and then we finished up the Energy Council on Sunday, and I come home Sunday afternoon. So it is really busy. You think this is a part-time job. It's really not a part-time job. If you're going to do the job well, you have to spend a lot of time at different things besides going to session, because session is just part of it. I'm also on the governor's blue ribbon panel to try to figure out how to get more money into the water plan fund. The water plan fund is funded with fertilizer fees, pesticide fees, and there's supposed to be $6 million the state general fund going into it. It hasn't done that lately, so they want to try to find a new way to fund it. One of the people from Topeka said, well, why don't we just put a 1 cent 1,000 on irrigation water. And this would cost irrigators in this area about $6.50 an acre more to irrigate. And I said, well, you know, where's this money going to be used? Well, it's going to be used for stream bank stabilization to try to keep the water out of, the silt out of the lakes in eastern Kansas so that more water will go on, and also a dredging project that's going on to benefit Wolf Creek nuclear plant. So they have enough water there. The dredging project creates 1,700 acre feet for a very small time. And it takes a lot of money to do that. So anyway, I think they forgot about that plan. And not the last plan that we came up with, and we're going to have another meeting in August. The last plan they came up with was thank you.
Thank you to the Garden City Chamber for hosting this. This is a great event. And thank you all for coming. You know, there's nothing better than being informed voters, you know, throughout the district. Sometimes we just hear different things, and when we'll be able to sit down and talk. I'd like to thank Marshall and Hill's camp, but I think they're outside in a wrestling match, and so they weren't going to be here. But anyway, and I want to thank Larry for showing up. That's good. Thank you. Appreciate it. The state of Kansas, we're in trouble. You know, the state is running, I'm running for the state Senate to be part of the solution. Now, Senator Powell, with some of his ads he's been running, will tell you I'm not Republican enough. I'm an analytical thinker. After analyzing both parties, I made a conscious decision about a decade ago to become a Republican. My opponent, he's been a lifelong born into Republican. I had to take reasoning and thinking, and it convinced me. Now, being a lifelong Republican, Senator Powell voted for the largest tax increase in state history. Me being a fiscal conservative, voted against it. As a lifelong conservative, Larry has, I hate to do this because I really like this guy, but you know, this is a game we're playing, but has voted to borrow, divert, hijack taxpayer money to cover the deficit created by a failed economic experiment. I want to work with others to find a long-term solution to the budget troubles that were now occurring. As a lifelong conservative, my opponent has repeatedly infringed on local government, voting time and time again for state government overreach into local units of government. I believe local elected officials are able to govern over the areas that they were elected to govern. If increasing taxes, continuing to support a broken economic plan, and continuous state government overreach is what a lifelong conservative is, I prefer to be a thoughtful Republican. For Western Kansas, a major driver of our economy is a well-maintained system of highways. In Topeka, we have repeatedly diverted KDOT funds to the tune of about $3 billion, dramatically reducing the state's ability to maintain high-quality roads for the citizens of Kansas. With the growth that we experience and what we're going to continue to experience with the dairy plant, with wind energy, the strain that we're going to put on our highways, without the financial wherewithal to even maintain the current conditions that our highways are right now, they will just continue to deteriorate. The greatest driver of economic success is education. In today's climate, a well-rounded student is key. And we as a legislator need the best teachers, the resources to educate students. For 20 years, I was a teacher. So I've seen firsthand what public education can do for the success of students and communities. Excuse me. Over the last 4 years, we as a state government have done everything we could to halt the advancement of education by choking off funding to K through 12 local districts. We've raised taxes by making schools raise their LOBs, that's property taxes, in order to fulfill a constitutional duty that we have as state government to fund our schools. We have passed that tax on to property taxes. We have chased other great teachers away to other states. We have also continually borrowed money from capers, making educators worried if their retirement that they have invested in for their whole career will be there when they retire. Cuts to post-secondary systems has pressured our college and university to raise tuition, putting the burdens on our children and families. And for 4 years now, Larry and his like-minded lawn conservatives have created a financial mess in Kansas. I want to bring to Kansas, the state Senate, the same responsible, thoughtful leadership that I've demonstrated in the State House, city government, and my time is up. I'll shut it off.
Thank you and good evening. I too would like to thank the Chamber of Commerce for hosting this event. I thank USD 457 for allowing us to use this facility, and of course Garden City High School for allowing us to use this beautiful auditorium. Back in my high school years, graduated in 1965 from Garden City High School, I used to walk these planks, but it was in another school. But I'm born and raised in Garden City. I was born in St. Catherine Hospital, not in the air-conditioned part, in that little house out front, you know, where they open the windows. I grew up here. I was educated at St. Mary's School and through our public school systems. I graduated high school in 1965. I went off to college at Fort Hays State College, not university, and I graduated from there. And from there, my dad was chairman of the draft board. When I stepped off the stage, he handed me my draft notice, and off I went. And served 4 years in the United States Air Force, and upon my discharge, I returned to Garden City. I actually returned to Washington University in Topeka and got my law degree, graduated cum laude from there, and then returned to Garden City and accepted a job for which I had not even applied. But this is where I returned. My mother lived here. I was able to be with her through the remainder of her life. I raised my children, my 2 daughters here. This has been my hometown. I don't want to leave it. I am a lawyer, and I've practiced law in Garden City for 40 years. First 20 years, private practice, all different sorts of practices, including criminal law. I then ran for the Finney County Attorney's Office in 1992 for a reason that this community had been growing so rapidly that the Office of the County Attorney wasn't keeping up with the growth of this community, and we were falling behind and things were happening, and I ran to change that, and I did. I served 20 years as Finney County Attorney. We grew from 900 square feet to 10,000 square feet and a professional office staff that was the starship of the state of Kansas. I rose up to the prosecution ranks to become president of the statewide County and District Attorneys Association. I'm happily retired as of January of '93. I'm very happily retired now. This is a completely new, novel thing for me. I've been a politician, but politics never arose in the office of the prosecutor because it wasn't allowed. This is very political. I was lured out at the suggestion of people to run for Representative Dahl's seat. And I look around this state and I see the horrible condition that we're in fiscally. We're failing. Our road systems are failing. We put $400 million in the bonds issued by the Department of Transportation and swept away and put into the general fund against which we're operating to service the deficit in this state. We are run by a system of ideologues in Topeka that are spending more time fighting with the Supreme Court than actually doing the duty of the people. That, I think I have an opportunity to step in and change, or at least be one of those who are willing to do so. I don't really have a whole lot more to say, so that's a good time. Mr. Fowler used to teach me in speech class to turn off the microphone and sit down and shut up before the timekeeper tells me to stop speaking.
Thank you, Mr. Will. Question, so I'm not asking an individual to go first every time. First question, and there's actually several questions here, but I believe they can be answered in the 2-minute time frame, hopefully, that we have. Are income tax cuts of 2012 and 2013 producing the desired results in Kansas? Should farmers and other business owners in Kansas be exempt from paying income taxes? Is the current system of taxation fair for all Kansans?
I've heard in politics that it's a kiss of death to suggest that we maybe take another look at increasing taxes. I'm not a professional politician. I don't intend to make a career out of this. I do intend to do what is right for this state. The current tax system that we are using, where we're giving an LLC exemption, we've reduced the rates, we've exempted so many people from paying income tax in this state. We had people rushing out to reorganize their businesses so they too could be exempt from paying taxes, and while the common worker pays taxes. That is not equitable. That is not fair. And I think that we should change that back. What has been the net result of that happening? Our revenues have fallen off so low that we can't meet our debt, and we're borrowing against capers, we're borrowing against the highway fund, we're passing taxes on to the counties and to the local governments to pay for the cost of government. We can change that by changing our tax structure back. I'm in favor of doing that. I would like to do it even if we have to edge it up to get out of this horrible mess we're in, because we've solved the equity portion of school finance. We have not solved whether the adequacy is there. And if the Supreme Court rules that inadequate, we Katie bar the door, because then we are in serious trouble. In short, no. It is not a fair system of taxation.
Senator Dahl. I'm sorry. Representative Dahl, and then Senator Powell. I'm
Larry's used to it. So. Now, the 2012 tax plan is a disaster. It's you know, to credit Governor Brownback, he won 2 elections running on the on this tax break. In his defense, we didn't know we were going to go into a recession. We didn't know that gas and oil was going to go into the tank. We didn't know the airline industry was going into the tank. My problem with the governor is that, being a former coach, I don't like his in-game adjustments. When we saw that these things were happening, I think that the governor needed to make adjustments to it. Now, we recently had a vote come up to reinstate the LLCs, which was a trap. The 2012 tax plan itself needs to be revisited and taken away. You know, I told people when I was running for the Senate, my goal and our goal of our government should be to get back to the 3rd page. Right now, state government's on the front page, it's on national news. We were a boring state because everything ran so smooth. You know, when I was teaching government, I taught government for 20 years, you would just dread getting, now people are holding cards up everywhere, they just want me to stop. But we were so boring, it was, and that's what we need to get back to. We need to become boring again and run a functional government.
Senator Powell, I'm sorry it's been a long day, but if you would, please.
You got up early? Kansas took in $140 million more last year than the year before. And they talk about the tax cuts that we put into effect. 75% of those tax cuts went to people like you. Your rates are cheaper. Senator or Representative Dahl. It's your fault over there. Representative Dahl had a chance to vote to do away with this. He said it was a trap and he didn't want to do it. Well, he also has never voted for a budget that I know of. He said, I voted for a tax increase. That was when we had the third longest session in history. And we had to get out of there. We had to fund schools. Finally, the people that didn't want to vote for a tax increase stepped up to the plate and done the responsible thing, which I think if you're going to be in Topeka, sometimes you have to do the responsible thing instead of coming home and complaining about it and saying, you know, I would have never done that. You can vote no all day long on everything, but you have to do the responsible thing, and I think that's what I have done as your senator.
Representative Dahl, we'll start with you. Personal income taxes were reduced as part of Governor Brownback's signature legislation. Tax revenue continues to be worse than projected. What should the legislature do in the next session to reverse a trend that's resulted in sharp cuts in state funding for programs across the board?
Well, first of all, we did have a $140 million increase in revenues. That's what happens when you have the largest tax increase in state history. And what we did, it was a tax shift from sales tax and property tax. I'd let anybody raise their hand if their property tax went down this last year. It hasn't, and it's going to continue to go up when we have these policies. The 2012 tax plan, I just had to get that out there. One of them things, but the 2012 tax plan has been a failure, a colossal failure. We need to go back. What the governor needs to do, in my opinion, is put it in the top drawer. If gas and oil would turn around, if the economy, if wheat gets to $6 again, if our economy would turn around, let's give it a shot, sure. Let's give it a shot. I'm sure you had the statistics to prove that it worked. But during a recession, the 2012 tax plan needs to be disregarded, started over, and we need to get back to funding everything. Well, schools are broke. Medicaid, we've cut 6%. We've just raised tuition. The colleges just raised tuition 6% for your kids. You know, it's not working. I mean, you don't have to look far. And I would venture to bet that all the industry, you know, Garden City has grown. We've been so blessed in Garden City, so blessed. Not one bit of it has to do with the tax plan. Not one bit. It's because of our economic development, it's because of our chamber, it's because of the hard work our city government, people out in the community committing. That's why Garden City's communicated has grown, because we get along and we work hard.
Senator Powell.
Thank you. He done that on purpose. Thank you. Kansas is not the only state that's having problems. When we had our special session last week, Alaska was in special session about school funding. Louisiana was in special session. I think Louisiana's off. Louisiana's budget was based on $88 oil. Oil is big in Louisiana because of all the offshore drilling, and $88 oil compared to $35 oil, their budget was in a real hole. I don't know how they solved it, but I do know that I think Kansas has a spending problem, not a taxing problem.
Thank you. Mr. Wheeler.
I agree that we should return back to prior 2012. I think that we have a income problem because of the acute tax cuts that went way beyond what anybody, in my belief, could foresee coming. Because our economy was heading that direction anyway. We could see it. And now we have continued refusal to accept that we should go back and look at it again and raise them up. It's an ideology of saying, the Laffer curve, if we lower taxes, business will pour in. Well, it hasn't been. It's been leaving the state. I can agree this. We have a spending problem because we are not properly allocating where we're spending our money. We're fighting over whether or not we should fund public education, at the same time saying we want business to come to our state when we don't have an educated student body because we keep cutting education. It just makes no sense to me. So the answer is yes. I think we must go back, and even if we have to widget up a little bit more for a short time to get us out of this huge deficit, maybe we ought to look at that again. But to do so, we have to talk to each other, and it can't be just an ideology, or an ideology, as some would call it. We have to sit down and say, we are in trouble, let's do something about it. Other states are doing something about it. Thank you very much.
Senator Powell, we'll start with you in this next question, please. The state has seen unprecedented diversions of Kansas Department of Transportation funds to address large budget shortfalls. Knowing good roads are essential for economic growth and stability in southwest Kansas, what will you do to ensure your district and region are in line for adequate road maintenance and improvements?
Well, according to the Secretary of Transportation, he can still do all the projects that needed to be done, even though we borrow that money. What Kansas has a problem with is the economy has went down, and the consensus revenue estimators have missed the mark. As Yogi Berra said one time, it's pretty hard to predict the future because we ain't there yet. But the consensus revenue estimate is what people hear about. Our budget hasn't went back. But when we get $140 million more into the state of Kansas, I think we have a spending problem. And by the way, the tax lid lets people live without a property tax increase. I think the tax lid was a good idea. The state doesn't raise property taxes. The state raises income tax, sales tax, and other taxes. They don't raise property taxes. We have a 20 mil property tax plus a 1 mil for building construction. So anyway, I think that the state of Kansas is doing fine, and I think our roads are doing fine. I think our upkeep is doing fine with the roads.
Thank you. Mr. Wheeler.
I just want to mention something Senator Powell just brought up. Property taxes can be better regulated by the state of Kansas over that of our local elected officials. If you want to raise it over a certain rate of inflation, then you must hold an election that is very expensive. How insulting is that to our local people? They run for office, they serve, they know what we're doing. If we don't like what they're doing, we vote them out of office. It's pure and simple. It's pure democracy. That addressed. I heard somebody in Topeka say, our roads right now are in pretty good shape. No, they're not. I have sat with people that work in the contractors industry and looked at the picture of the bridges in this state. They are deplorable. They're falling apart. Many of them must be replaced. They're not on the plan yet, but they have to be. Maybe we can meet what we have now, but not what we're going to do in the near future. Those must be repaired. I had the chance to drive to Phoenix through Oklahoma and down through Texas, and I was so thankful for Kansas roads compared to what they have. We're headed there, and it won't be long if we don't stop spending and borrowing from the state highway fund.
We just bonded $900 million, state did, to pay debt. You know, the Moody bond rating that grades your bond rating, we've been lowered twice. So that means that $900 million the last year cost us much more than it has in the past. To say that we don't have a revenue problem is crazy. It's nuts. I mean, yeah, we raised $140 million more, but how much did we steal from KDOT? It's been just under $3 billion. I think it's $287 billion that we have taken from KDOT. We've taken capers, more than $140 million from capers. You know, for this, bringing in $140 million, and then bagging on the people who do these revenue estimates. They have been accurate forever until this tax plan came. No one saw how disastrous this tax plan was going to be. And so we can't do that. You know what? We all do this. If we have a business, we want it as efficient as possible. If we run a school, we want it to be as efficient as possible. You know, there's a cost of doing business, and we're not giving them the money to do it. You know, everybody says, well, we spend so much money on students, you know, like the third largest in the country. Well, that's because our legislators chose time back that we were going to fund it with the general fund, not on the backs of property taxes. Of all taxes out there, without a doubt, property tax is the Lucifer of taxes. It's the worst tax that we have out there. And so if we can't bring more money in, and the only way we're going to bring is, what the heck was the question anyway? But I'm about done. But if we can't bring more money in, you know, through taxes, by restructuring the three-legged stool, which worked great, and bring the three-legged stool back, we're going to be talking about deficit for as long as we don't have a three-legged stool. Thank you.
Help struggling rural hospitals. Will you support the governor's stand on blocking Medicaid expansion?
I will admit that I have had questions about this myself, but I went out and I sought answers, and I speak to the people in the health industry all the way across the board. No, I do not support the governor in blocking Medicaid expansion. I know that we have hospitals that are failing in this state. We can't turn to our emergency rooms, the most expensive method of treating people, to provide for those people that don't have health insurance. Who is really losing out is not the poor, not the very poor people, it's the working poor that don't rise up, that they can actually get covered, and they are left out in the open. We can change that and bring that money into the state. And the state, the money that comes in from the federal government will circulate through the economy and enhance our economy. I have been sold, because I was under the mistaken belief before that eventually the federal government is going to cut off all funding. That's not true. It will continue on, and should they ever elect to do that, we have the right to opt out of further compliance. Why not bring the money in, use it to help our people, our hospitals?
From the very beginning, it wasn't a popular view at the very beginning. I've been for Medicaid expansion. Currently, we've lost out on $2 billion. Our hospitals, I've stopped and talked to all the hospital administrators in the 39th district, and each one of them want Medicaid expansion. What happens is that we can't find providers to treat people, because if they don't accept Medicaid, the doctors don't accept Medicaid, they go to the emergency room. So in turn, what that does is raises all of our premiums. And so healthcare is so expensive, it needs so much work. But even the hospital that wouldn't close in the region, probably the only one that wouldn't close in the region, is Garden City. But if you talk to Scott Taylor, he's very much in favor of Medicaid expansion. And when it comes down to it, it's not what I think. It's what the professionals think. It's what the CEOs of every single hospital think. Because, you know, it's not our job to be up there talking and doing like this. It's our job to be listeners and to listen to people, and you take their views, combine them, and then pass legislation or get legislation passed to favor those views. But Medicaid expansion is something that we need.
Senator Powell.
I do not support expanding Medicaid. I support the governor on this, because even though Mr. Wheeler says that the federal government is going to keep funding this, I'm not sure where he gets that guarantee. The federal government starts a program and the state buys into it, and then the funding goes away and the state picks it up. The state doesn't have the money to pick up Medicaid expansion. And we heard two people up here a while ago say that we're going to do away with Obamacare. So where does the funding go when they do away with Obamacare? I don't support Medicaid expansion.
Representative Dahl, we'll start with you on this one. Water remains a critical issue in western Kansas, yet it received little attention in the last legislative session. What will you do to make it more of a priority with your peers in the legislature?
Without question, probably water is the biggest issue we have as far as the economics is concerned in western Kansas. My family being in the feed yard business, water is a huge concern. You know, where are they going to get the water? How are they going to get the water? Secure water for the future. You know, being a former mayor and commissioner of Garden City, we were always concerned about the city. You know, where are we going to get our water? How are we going to get our water? You know, there's different programs that are out there. And I rely on Mark Bruton, our current mayor, Chris Law. You know, they're experts in water. Larry's an expert in water. There's no question about it. He does a great job with water. But, you know, there's things that are going on out there that I think are fantastic. And one of the things is just south here in Garden City. It's an innovative farm where they're doing different techniques with farming. And the sprinklers, you know, back in our day, it was flood irrigating when I began. There was nothing worse than seeing Glenn Riney pull into town with his trailer, because that means he was going to pull you out whether you were 3 years old or not. You were going to go move pipe. So we all just docked into Muntz's Hole right there in Ingalls. But anyway, then if the sprinklers went, you know, now they're the drag kind. You know, now we're going to more innovative farming. But, you know, that's got to be decided among the farmers within that region. In Hoxie, they have this group that they allow 11 inches of water per each group. You know, that's got to be done among the farmers themselves in that region. I don't think that's something, you know, the state needs to we need to overwatch it, but I think each region is different and needs to be dealt with differently, because the state's, you know, the water situation is different in Kansas City than it is in Garden City.
Senator Powell.
Thank you. Water is a big issue. This is the largest agricultural region in the world because of the Ocala Aquifer. More dollars are raised in this region than any other place in the world. And we've done a lot of things last year. We expanded the LEMAs, the local enhanced management areas. We passed a CREP bill, which has been going on in the budget in the past to try to get people to quit irrigating, and we pay them to do away with their water right. We have passed bills that if you don't pump your well, you don't lose your water right. We have done a lot of things in water, and we need to do a lot more. The lawsuits that are going on right now, and more of them are coming on, we had a bill last year to try to fix that. the Kansas Livestock Association, the Kansas Farm Bureau, we were going to try to pass it, and they said, it's not time. We haven't looked at it long enough. We need to have a little more time to look at this. So we didn't do anything with it. And so next year, why, we'll work on that. But it's really not good to have courts make decisions that should be made by experts. So anyway, water is really important, and we need to figure out a way to make it last a little longer, or help it come from Missouri. And this is a deal that is a big deal. We had a meeting with Water One from Johnson County. Water One furnishes most of the water for Johnson County. So they're concerned about western Kansas taking water out of the Missouri River and shipping it to western Kansas. So anyway, we've had meetings with them, and we need to have them on board before we can do anything. So thank you.
Thank you, Senator. Mr. Wheeler.
I listened to all of the candidates tonight, and I will readily admit that I'm not a farm boy. I was raised in the city. So I am not a resident expert on the water issue. I am a resident learner of anything that I need to do. When it comes to this issue, I'm willing to listen to people who are very knowledgeable in the area. In my profession, however, I did know something about water. I knew as a prosecutor that men kill over women and water, but not necessarily in that order. I also experienced the latter because I took my kids skiing to Monarch shortly after Kansas succeeded in suing Colorado over the water. And I was riding up a chairlift, and some guy from the valley out there asked me where I'm from, and I said I'm from Garden City, Kansas, and he tried to throw me off the chairlift. So I do know it is a serious issue. I've listened with interest with the viaduct issue. I still wonder how another state with the river right down the middle is the state line. They don't want to give up their water. I don't know how we're going to do that, and where are we going to channel it to, and who benefits from it. But that's what I have to do, is I have to listen. So that's my answer. I'm not sure of the answer, but I'm willing to listen to people who are knowledgeable in the area.
Senator Powell, we'll start with you on this question. Funding for public education has been an ongoing issue. Share your thoughts on the financial operations of K-12 schools in your district. Do you agree with shifting more of the funding responsibilities for K-12 public schools from state to local through higher property taxes?
No, I don't, and I can tell you that I don't know whether we have the funding fixed for all of this year. I hope there's not another special session. We think that what we've done will satisfy the court. Matter of fact, we had a letter, the plaintiffs signed a letter that it would satisfy them. The real tough issue in the future, which the block grant expires this year. This is the last year of the block grant. The tough issue is getting a new school funding plan, new school formula. Because you'll get a printout on a school formula, and somebody will look at it and say, well, I can't vote for this. My district gets cut. So this is a complicated deal, and we need to fund schools, but we need to figure out how to satisfy the court, to keep the courts from telling the legislature how to do this thing. And I don't look forward to a new funding formula for schools, because it's really going to be tough, and we might be there 200 days to try to get that done.
Thank you. Mr. Wheeler.
I'm not sure that I heard the entire question.
I'll repeat it. Funding for public education has been an ongoing issue. Share your thoughts on the financial operations of K through 12 schools in your district. Do you agree with shifting more of the funding responsibility for K through 12 public schools from state to local through higher property taxes?
No, I don't. I am concerned that we've only resolved half of the school funding issue, and that is the sufficiency of funding is still to come, and I think we're going to lose that. So to say I don't want to start to reconsider a new funding issue when the block grant expires in 2017, we will have no method of funding unless we address it and consider it and come up with a plan. I personally believe, it seems obvious to me, that if we just went back to what we had before and perhaps made some tweaks in it and perhaps took advantage of putting in a little cost of living in there, that we would have a sufficient school funding program that would satisfy the courts, satisfy the school districts, and satisfy everybody. But that seems too simple to do. I would rather just not have to think about having to do it because it's going to be so hard. No, we can't accept that as an answer. The answer is no, I don't favor that.
Thank you. Representative Dahl.
When the block grant was coming about, the chairman of Ways and Means, who really didn't know me, didn't care to know me, he was knew him, you'd understand. But he was walking down the hall and he goes, "Hey, aren't you from Garden City?" I go, "Yeah." And he goes, "How do you feel about the Barack grant?" I said, "It doesn't matter how I feel about it." I called my superintendent, he's against it. I called two of my principals, they were against it. I called 3 school board members, all of them were against it. I'm voting no. Well, about 2 weeks later, I run into him again. And he says, "Hey, where are you at on the," "Oh yeah, you're the guy that calls back home." Yeah, I'm that guy. But no, the block grant itself is unconstitutional. I just saw on Twitter and such that the courts we're going to open schools. Great, that's a good thing. But to put it, what's the funding that we have now? If you haven't raised your LOB and maxed it out, you're punished. So what the formula says right now, we're forcing people to raise property taxes. Schools such as Garden City, if they weren't up to 32 or whatever it was, they were punished. They were forced to raise it up there in order to get extraordinary need fund when they get more students in or something to that nature. I know my hometown back in Ingalls, 5, 6, 7 years ago, had 0 LOB. Now they were forced to max out because of the formula that we have now. They were forced to raise their LOB to 30 because of the formula we have now. You know, we weren't really discussing the school finance plan before 2012 because it wasn't a problem. After the Gannon case in the 1990s, everything seemed to be working fine, but we seem to screw it up like government can sometimes.
We'll start with you to the next question. Do you support state mandated renewal portfolio standards, RPS, for wind energy? And please explain your answer.
Wind energy is a difficult subject for me because generally I would say that I do not support an industry that cannot sustain itself without subsidy. And we have quite a few of these things that we are funding with our tax funds to keep them going. But the counterpoint to this, and this is the one area where I'm going to break down and say politics may become more important, or not necessarily politics, the interest of my community. Garden City, my district, is very highly invested in wind energy. And therefore, I think that we should continue it for that very reason.
Thank you. Representative Dahl.
First of all, the RPS is pretty much a non-factor. You know, we were supposed to be 20 by 20, we're almost there. We're supposed to be 25 by 25, we're almost there. It was something that was just thrown out there to goof on people. That, but, you know, Western Kansas especially, we can be an energy center. I mean, when these costs go down with solar energy, thermal energy, wind energy, you know, we have the opportunity. You know, I don't know if you noticed, we don't have a lot of trees, we don't have a lot of hills. That's a great opportunity for a lot of people. So, do I favor the RPS? To me, it's non-factor. If I had to vote yes, I mean, if I had to vote right now, I'd probably vote yes, because we're already there. All the companies are already 25%, and that's what they got to be, is 25 by 25, and that's a deal that was struck between Parkinson and the Sunflower people way back when. So, you know, I know that's weird for government to, you know, keep a promise, but that's what the promise was, so I say keep it.
Thank you. Senator Powell.
We have already repealed the RPS mandate a year or so ago. There was a deal struck with the wind energy companies that if this mandate was repealed, why, and I don't know how they can guarantee that they wouldn't have to pay property taxes for 10 years. And so the mandate has already been repealed, and I supported that the repeal of that mandate.
Thank you. Do you think current funding of early childhood programs such as early intervention, tiny K, home visiting, and early Head Start is adequate? Please explain your answer.
It might be adequate, but we keep stealing money from it. We had the tobacco settlement fund that we have swept into the general fund. All the money that goes there, because, you know, it seems to me that the money that we seem to be stealing are from the people who don't have a voice. And a lot of those are the Children's Service League. Over and over and over again, I was fortunate enough to go on a couple of case studies with them, and the work they do is absolutely incredible. You know, my view of government, we need to be extremely fiscally conservative. But people who can't help themselves, as a Christian nation, we need to help these people, and we need to help them as much as we can. If we can't get it from private money, we need to do it from public money. Those people have a right to have the best quality life they can possibly have.
Thank you. Senator Powell.
Well, I don't know about the adequacy of it, but I'm on the Ways and Means Committee, and I did keep the tobacco money from going into the state general fund. And I'll tell you the reason I've done that, because stuff gets into the state general fund and it doesn't get back to the people it belongs to. And there was a couple of ladies from Johnson County spent a lot of time in my office telling me how this needed to be done. So that's what happened. And another reason is because the water plan fund, that $6 million that's supposed to come to the water plan fund hasn't come there because we needed it for other things. So I believe that the tobacco money should stay separate from the state general fund. And, you know, as far as adequacy, I don't know, but we've done the best we could.
Thank you, Senator. Mr. Wheeler.
It is an interesting question. I'm really not certain myself. I know that we have Children's Service League that's doing an exemplary service to our community. However, I am concerned with, as we continue to underfund our state on the revenue side, that we just sweep money from somewhere. This last session where we borrowed money from other funds, the highway fund, to bring equity to our school funding, we also stripped money from an aged program so that we aren't able to provide services to them as we do so adequately. Who's next? That's really what the question is. It's not so much how are we now, until we make the changes, who's going to be next, because it will be. We're going to sweep away from somebody.
We now are getting able to get to some questions we have gotten from the audience. And Senator Powell, we'll start with you on this one. In your viewpoint, is Kansas headed in the right direction or wrong direction? And please explain that answer. And then what can you do as a representative or senator moving forward to make a positive contribution for improvement in the state of Kansas?
Well, I think whether they're headed in the right direction or the wrong direction, look at Garden City, how it's been growing. I think that's the right direction. And I think Kansas is headed in the right direction. Our economy is one of the things that we have to think about. And so, as a state senator, I think as the chairman of the Natural Resources Committee, I can work on these water issues and figure out things that we can try to get done to help extend the Ocala Aquifer. I think the farm that we have here in Finney County to try to get that done is a start. Different crops that we've talked about these for a lot of times, and we need different herbicides. One of the main reasons that people raise corn is because of the herbicides. Milo will get shattercane in it and other things that is not desirable because they don't have a herbicide to control it. So I think Kansas is headed in the right direction. If we can get the economy growing, why, I think Kansas will grow.
Thank you, Senator. Mr. Wheeler.
The reason I am running is because I firmly believe that Kansas is heading in the wrong direction. Our governor is the least popular governor in the United States. The way Kansas is operating now is emblematic for every other state of what not to do. We can change that. We saw a demonstration in the special session. It was kind of refreshing. I don't know how it came about. But people on the right and people on the left and people in the middle came together to resolve that one single issue. Now, yes, somebody had to throw in a fight for a constitutional amendment to bar the court from ruling on school funding. Somebody had to break out of mutual cooperation. But I think that if we get enough people in there to change the leadership, to move it more towards the center and get people to talking with each other, we can solve the issues that face the state. And I don't believe, as a lifetime Garden City resident, that the successes of Garden City that we have seen over the years is any fault of the legislature. It is our local governing officials, our economic development, and our Chamber of Commerce. That's who, not the legislature.
Thank you, Mr. Wheeler. Representative Dahl.
I believe Senator Powell voted for that amendment that John was talking about. I just throw that out there, but look at kink and things. And the other thing is, Garden City has done wonderfully despite state government. We have great city commission, great mayors. The former mayor was great. Our county commissioners do a fantastic job. And you know what's really cool about Garden City and Finney County is that they get along. And you go to other counties, you go to Ford County, you go to Seward County, they don't like each other. They fight like Larry and I do. But anyway, what we have to get back to, we got to get back to the three-legged stool. If we get back to the three-legged stool, we didn't have these fiscal problems that we're talking about 10 years ago. It's, I think it's pretty simple. If we have a fair tax plan, another thing that made Garden City great too was a public-private partnership has really helped Garden City a lot, and a lot of cities aren't blessed enough to have that. But anyway, we need to get back to the three-legged stool. The direction we're going is absolutely a train wreck. Thank you.
Representative Dahl, this question is directed at you. Upon research of your voting record, you have voted against many pro-business Republican-sponsored bills, including House Bills 2391, House Vote 90, House Vote 92, House Vote 153, and others. The consequences of your vote could have had an adverse effect on businesses and the economy in southwest Kansas. With you recently switching from the Democratic Party, how can you ensure Republican voters in a Republican primary that you are truly a Republican?
First of all, I switched parties 10 years ago, if that's recent. You know, I was able to still play basketball 10 years ago, and I really suck right now at it. But it's, I have no idea what any of those bills are. Do you have any idea what any of those bills are? Jennings, do you have any idea what those bills are? No one knows what those bills are. I can tell you what I do, though. Here's what I do, is I bring, when I get a bill, and it deals with agriculture, for example, I call managers of the elevator, I call ag people. When I get bills that deal with schools, I call the superintendents. There's 2 of them up there right now. I'll tell you, I call them all the time, text them, whatever. So if they were pro-business, I'm wondering if they're pro-business for Western Kansas, because what pro-business with the Kansas Chamber is and what pro-business for Garden City are 2 very distinct, different things. And yes, I am a localist. You know, this Republican-Democrat thing, I'm a fiscal conservative, I am. But more than anything, I'm a Western Kansas person, and I'm not going to let the Kansas Chamber tell me how to vote, and they can send as many dadgum postcards on me as they want. I'm not afraid. Thank you.
Thank you, Representative Ball. Just a disclaimer here that the Garden City Area Chamber of Commerce is not a member of the Kansas State Chamber due to some philosophical differences enough said. Senator Powell or Mr. Wheeler, do you have any response or comment to that? To the question to Representative Dahl?
Well, I don't know what bills those were either. You know, we have a lot of bills and a lot of numbers, and I suppose some people can remember those, but I'm not one of them. But I do know that I've been endorsed by the Kansas Chamber. I've been endorsed by Kansans for Life, and I don't know, I'm still looking for the endorsement from the Garden City Chamber. So we'll just see what happens. But thank you.
Thank you, Senator. Mr. Wheeler?
If I may. I can stand before you and proudly say that I, too, did not vote for any of those bills. I do know that a lot of our pro-business bills are wandering into our legislature through the Council for Legislative Exchange Council. And I'm going to guess that most of those were those kind of bills. I can also say that I'm aware that the Kansas Chamber of Commerce rendered their endorsements today, and I am just absolutely mortified that I am not endorsed by the Kansas Chamber. If I had a pin as a badge of honor, I would have it on my lapel tonight. That's not to say I don't respect business, I do. I just feel that there are some organizations that much of what their work is driven by an ideology more than it is common sense. And that's my response.
Thank you, Mr. Wheeler. It is the policy of the Garden City Area Chamber of Commerce that we do not endorse candidates. What we really like to do is be able to have forums that we can have our candidates express their positions and their beliefs on things, and that's what we're very fortunate enough tonight to have done. Excuse me, the gentleman, bear with me. This next question is rather long. Kansas school funding continues to be an important issue. In the last week, it appears the state has averted a school shutdown in a special legislative session addressing the equity part of the funding process. The adequacy part of the process is still in question. My data shows that if you go back to 2009 and adjust school funding for inflation and increased enrollment, Kansas schools are underfunded today by over $400 million. When the block grant law was adopted in March of 2015, it was designed to expire in 2 years. So after June 30th, 2017, there is no law in place to fund Kansas schools. A school funding system will have to be adopted during the next legislative session. Do you believe Kansas schools are underfunded? How do you believe the state should proceed in developing a system to fund our schools? Senator Powell, if we can start with you on this question, please.
Well, I think I addressed this a while ago. I think this is going to be one of the toughest issues to face the legislature that we've had for many years. I've heard about these school deals before, because somebody will look down and say, oh my God, my district is affected. I can't vote for this. And when you do these formulas, everybody's going to be affected somewhere or another. And I have no idea how we're going to solve this deal, but we need to figure out some way to keep these deals out of court. I just don't think it's a good idea for the court to tell the legislature how much money they can have to spend to fund schools, because then we come back and we do things like John and John have been talking about. We take money from other places and give it to the school funding because the court says to. So it's going to be a big job, but and I think maybe this is the reason that we had some people that didn't run again. Senator Abrams didn't run again because I think this is because he didn't want to get involved in this. And he knew a lot about schools. I don't know that much about them. I work on water. So we'll see what happens.
Thank you, Senator. Mr. Wheeler.
I have had people ask me, why are you running for this seat? And my response is, it's not that I really want to, it's that I have to. I'm willing to. And I'm willing to devote my efforts in trying to improve the quality of this state. There will be some very difficult questions facing the state of Kansas over school financing. The reason that we must address it, and I can say this as, I believe, the only lawyer to have been on the stage tonight. It's called the Kansas Constitution, that we, the people of the state of Kansas, in the Kansas Constitution provides that the legislature shall properly fund the public schools of this state. Until that Constitution is amended by the people, we must continue to fund our schools adequately, even if it's going to be really, really hard. I'm not a resident expert in everything. I certainly can claim that I am not. But I'm willing to learn, I'm willing to listen, and I think that a lot of people are leaving the legislature because they see that their actions while they were there is the handwriting on the wall, and the people of this state are no longer supporting them anymore. And if you look at candidates across the state that are running, we may find a little change in leadership, at least in the House. I'm not sure about the Senate. We'll see. I'm willing to help.
Thank you, Mr. Wheeler. Representative Dahl.
First, I want to address something. I will not be, he got the endorsement from the Kansas for Life. You know, every one of my votes has been pro-life. Where I blew my endorsement aspect is when they start telling us how we're going to select judicial judges. And if you didn't vote for that amendment that he voted for during the special session, you weren't endorsed by the Kansans for Life. So I just want you to know, check my record on pro-life and you'll see it's 100%. So then we're going to fight that because people out here are pro-life. I'm pro-life, but that's out. But the adequacy there on the schools, we're $400 million short. Right now, we're anywhere between 26th and 29th as far as giving money to students per student per year. That's below average. That's below 50%. You know, what we have to do is get back to the three-legged stool, and we need to have a funded government, which our government is broke. It's like, I don't know, a wife going on some kind of shopping spree when you're just going on a month check or something like that. But we're broke. We're broke. So what we need to do is get the three-legged stool back, where there's a fair tax, and do what the Constitution tells us to do. And John was exactly right. It's very clear in the Constitution that we shall fund schools. And it was determined in the Gannon case how we funded schools. And so unless there's another court case, which there was, they lost, we need to fund schools like the Constitution says.
This will be the last question prior to the closing statements by our candidates. Mr. Wheeler, we'll start with you. The Supreme Court's decision was first handed down in February. Why did it take until June and the threat of schools being closed to find a solution?
I think the answer to that is obvious. The handwriting was on the wall when the Supreme Court said the funding is not equitable. Instead of addressing the equity issue before we had to go into a very expensive special session, much time was spent on the floor of the Senate and the House as to how we can get rid of the Supreme Court, one of the co-equal branches of government. We didn't address the issue. That's the reason it wasn't resolved. There is an ideological split in the legislature, that being the House and the Senate, over what is the proper function of the legislature versus the Supreme Court. I will candidly admit, I was appointed by the Chief Justice to sit on the Blue Ribbon Commission of the Supreme Court. I was appointed by the Chief Justice to sit on the Budget Advisory Commission, trying to steer the court through trying to address some of the issues that they're having with the legislature. Went nowhere because of ideology. If you have enough time to fight over ideology, you don't have enough time to address the issue, and that is adequate funding.
Thank you. Representative Dahl.
You know, I love our country. Our country. I was a history teacher, a government teacher, and you go back and you read, like John Adams by David McCullough and different books and how it came to being and everything like this, and how they came up with a three-branch government that was tri-equal, and the checks and balances and the separation of powers. First time ever in the world that this type of government was used. The results of that is we have the longest constitution, effective longest constitution of any country in the world, by far. At the state level, we mirrored that. We have three branches of government, tri-equal. And so when we as a legislature, because we didn't like the results of the courts, decided that we were going to attack the courts instead, that's wrong. I believe that we need to adequately fund the schools. I think the courts did what their job was, and if we're mad about anybody, I've coached for, like I said, I coached for a long time. And when I was at Scott City and we played Oakley and we got beat by them, we could yell at the referees all we wanted to, but the bottom line is we got beat by Oakley. The courts, the legislator didn't get beat by the courts, they got beat by Dodge City and those other three schools, and we're mad at the referees. Does make no sense. We need to fund schools. And finally on this, that's going to be huge, funding schools. And I think there's a clear difference between the two candidates in funding schools.
Thank you, Representative Dahl. Senator Powell.
Thanks for telling me how to do this. Mr. Wheeler said that the legislature didn't do their job when we left the legislature, we done what we thought would satisfy the court. I'm not sure that anybody knows what will satisfy the court, whether the last thing that we done will satisfy the court or not. The legislature has a room full of lawyers, and we done it on the best judgment of all those lawyers. And what I don't understand is, if we're 3 equal units of government, how can the court tell the legislature what to do? It is just absolutely nuts, the things that have went on with this school funding. Thank you.
Thank you, Senator Powell. Now it's time for the closing statements, and I'll remind you we have a 3-minute time limit on those, please. Mr. Wheeler, we will start with you.
Well, thank you for paying attention to what I have to say, even if perhaps some of it you don't agree with. I do want to say that from my recollection, I haven't raised that much money, but I think I've only had 3 PACs contribute to me, all of which I agree with them. I am not seeking the endorsement of some that were even mentioned here tonight, because the only endorsement that I care about is the endorsement of the people of Garden City within the 123rd Legislative District. If I can have your support to vote me into the office, then I have exactly what I need, and that is the authority to exercise my judgment and try to do the best I can do on your behalf. I am a longtime Garden Cityan. I have been a salesman for this community for my entire life. I've been laughed at by eastern Kansas people that say, we'd like to come out and visit you, John, but we don't know if you got a hitching post in front of your office. Well, that's not who we are. We are one of the most advanced, medium-sized, larger-sized cities in the state. I'm proud of it. I'm proud that I have been able to participate in it. Thank you very much, and I ask for your vote in the upcoming election.
Thank you, Mr. Wheeler. Representative Dahl.
When you walk into the voting booth prior to or on August the 2nd, the choice is pretty simple. You can vote for the same senator, get the same failed results, or you can vote for solutions that are going to put the state back on solid ground. Senator Powell has continued to say that I'm not Republican enough. This was on his radio ads. That's what's going to be on his postcard probably, aren't they, Larry? But as election progresses, Larry and special interest groups that support him are going to be more aggressive to try to convince you that that's true. You'll see things on social media, which we've already seen. You'll see him on the radio calling me a Democrat. I'm too liberal. You'll see and hear ads well, you'll see things on postcards. I have pictures with people I have never met. Remember Steve Morris with pictures with Jennings with pictures with Obama. And I asked Russ, I was really disappointed. How did you get to meet the president? I've never met him, John, but I saw the picture, so it must be true. So when you see those things, be sure that they're not true. I try to be an analytical, reasonable Republican that fights for you. So before you vote, ask these questions to yourself. What's conservative about higher property taxes and sales taxes? What's conservative about constantly borrowing, diverting tax dollars to cover a failed experiment? What's conservative about infringing on the abilities of local governments to do their job? My constituents are you guys. This thing, I'm a localist. I've been quoted in the paper over and over and over again. When John, I won't go there. Larry's been endorsed by the Kansas Chamber, Kansas for Life, all those things. And, when we was raising money in January, I looked at the sheet. I raised about $50,000 from people around here. I got like 6 from Topeka. He didn't raise any out here. I'm sure he has by now, haven't you? No? Just all from Topeka? Okay. Thank you. And please, consider me on August the 2nd. And please vote early if you get the opportunity. Thank you.
Thank you, Representative Dahl. Senator Powell.
Well, thank you, and thank everybody for coming tonight. I think there's probably a clear difference between me and my opponent, the main difference I see is I think that you have the ability to spend money better than government. I think government wastes a lot of money. And another thing, I have heard all night that we need to get back to the three-legged stool. What does that mean? That means a tax increase. Do you want your taxes increased so government can spend your money rather than you? The property tax lid lets the people of Kansas, if the local units of government want to raise property taxes over the rate of inflation for certain things, it lets the people vote. What's closer to the ground than people? The people can vote. If it's a good idea, why can't the people vote for it? So I think you have a clear choice. You have someone that wants to increase taxes, that's what he always talks about, or you have someone that thinks that you can spend your money better than government.
Thanks, Senator. Ladies and gentlemen, please help me in thanking Representative Dahl, Senator Powell, and Mr. Wheeler for being here tonight. We do appreciate your time, gentlemen. I'd also like to thank Dr. Carlin for use of this facility, USD 457. Is Charles Kipp still here? He's up there in the